And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you this New Year's Eve?
I'm good, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. You got any big plans for the for New Year's?
The Fiesta Bowl.
Yes, well, Penn State's playing at what 6 o'clock tonight?
Well, the game's at like 7, but yeah.
7. And who are they playing and where are they playing it?
They're playing Boise State in is it Glendale, Arizona?
Yeah, and if what happens if they win? What happens if they lose?
Then we'll play either let's see, Notre Dame or uh Georgia in the Orange Bowl.
If they win,
Yep.
and if they lose, it's over.
If they lose, it's over.
It's over. All right. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. All right. Um, this being the last show of the year, I'm going to try to keep it mostly lighter today. I got a bunch of light stuff and informative stuff. Try not to get too heavy tonight. So I'm going to start off. Our quote of the week is going to be from Thomas Edison and why so many people miss opportunities to become richer. I'm going to tell you what my New Year's resolution is for 2025. Don't know if have you formed any so far?
Not yet.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what mine is. Maybe they'll give you some ideas. And the stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll tell you about how the ATF decided they should raid the family, a black family in Maryland, why they should conduct a raid on their house at 4:30 in the morning while they and their teenage children were sleeping. Really stupid raid. Um, we have a quiz for the people who may think they're wondering, am I old? We have a quiz that can answer the question, are you old? Um, And of course, tonight there's going to be an estimated 100,000 people in New York City. And most people don't know this, but there's not a public bathroom within 6 blocks of Times Square. So we'll tell you what solution a great many of those 100,000 people are going to be using, not being having access to the bathroom. Um, Also, one of the big antivirus companies has come out with the list of this year's 20 most commonly used passwords. So we're going to run down those passwords to see if any of our listeners are using these 20 common passwords, which just invites people to hack you. Um, we'll tell you about a story that came out of Denver about how insurance companies, without your knowledge, are adding additional drivers to your policy and then charging you extra. And by the way, producer Susan, I see your microphone says muted.
That's because the dog is barking
Oh, okay.
at the news.
All right. But yeah, insurance companies now have, and I'll tell you where they get this information, but based upon some public records, they assume, oh, yeah, well, there must be more drivers in your house. So we're going to add additional drivers, even though we don't know their names. We're going to tack them onto your policy and increase your premium for those additional unnamed drivers. And so that's why you should examine your renewal policy. Well, also, and do you know there's a city in the United States where by law every resident is required to own a gun?
Wow.
Well, you didn't know that?
No.
Well, there is, and I'm going to tell you which city it is and what has happened to their crime rate as a result of every citizen being required to own a gun. And we have a little clip from somebody who went there and interviewed people. Um, we'll tell you about a new law that is going into effect on tomorrow in New York State that's going to penalize fossil fuel companies for selling fossil fuels in the state of New York and why and what's going to cost each and every resident of that state. It's one of these things that, yeah, we're going to tax those evil fossil fuel companies, but of course it's going to get passed down to the
Yeah.
consumers. And finally, our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Bradenton, Florida, where two armed illegal immigrants, decide to stage a home invasion, except they didn't count on the homeowner being armed as well. And as usual, it didn't work out well for at least one of them. So anyway, anything else you think we should talk about today?
No, that sounds like an awful lot to cover in 30
All
minutes.
right, well, we'll try to go quick. All right. Thomas Edison, has been dead for 100 years. He said, opportunity is missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. I mean, how true is that?
Yeah, very true.
I mean, you look at some of the great inventions, people sweated, for weeks and months and years until they finally got it right. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. Okay. There was a black family in Maryland. The fact that they were the only black family in their neighborhood. 4:30, and they got three teenage kids, two girls and a boy. 4:30 in the morning, The wife is awakened by they got the Ring camera, and then she said, "Wait, sir, there's somebody in our backyard, somebody in our front yard," and the people begin break down the front door, throwing flashbang grenades in the house. They got the canine search dogs, and they literally staged a raid on this guy's house at 4:30 in the morning. Well, we understand you have illegal guns in the house. So you're a felon in possession of guns. And by the way, they handcuffed him. They handcuffed his teenage daughters. And it's 20 degrees outside. They're in their pajamas, and they put them in a paddy wagon in their pajamas in 20-degree weather in handcuffs while they search the house. And the guy has a gun safe. He keeps all of his guns in a safe. And they said, "Well, you either open that safe, or we're going to blow it open." He said, "I'll be happy to open my safe." Anyway, they do all this. He opens his safe. They look every gun. They check every serial number. It turns out he has no illegal guns. He's not a felon. So they got some judge to sign a search warrant. They could have knocked on his door and said, "Sir, we have a search warrant. We'd like to examine your guns." But no. 4:30 morning, three teenage kids sound asleep. It's pitch black, by the way. And they break down his door and start throwing flashbang grenades in the house. They wound up, by the way, reimbursing him for the damage because the flashbangs, they broke open some walls and stuff. They wound up writing him a check for like $15,000. But how stupid is this, and why and needless for the ATF to break into somebody's house at 4:30 in the morning, based
Yeah,
on
why is this necessary? And what about the trauma to the children?
well, that's the other thing. I mean, the kid's four. By the way, his son apparently slept. His son had a room. His 14-year-old son had a room in the basement. When they went down the basement stairs, they also threw a flashbang grenade down the stairs where the 14-year-old son was sleeping. And then they took the 14-year-old son and the two girls in handcuffs in their pajamas and sat him in the paddy wagon while it was 20 degrees outside. Uh, Completely unnecessary. So this is, almost Gestapo tactics, and they found nothing. He had no, every gun he had was a legal gun, legally purchased, nothing stolen, no machine guns, and he was not a felon in possession of a gun. He's never been arrested and convicted of a felony.
So
So
what is their justification for this behavior?
they don't have one. It's like, oh, our mistake, never mind. Sorry, never mind. By the way, the guy's name was Mark Manley, uh, Manley. If you want to look it up, or and of course, I've got a link to the whole story, which producer Susan, I hope you can put up in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Mark Manley, again in Maryland, ATF raid on the home of Mark Manley. All right. So let's move on to something a little more lighter. So 100,000 people in Times Square tonight, no bathrooms. And I think I told you this. So people are wondering, well, gee, if there's no public bathrooms, and of course the businesses there won't let you in, the office
Mhm.
buildings are closed and the restaurants are very strict about bathrooms for customers only.
Yeah.
So the all the advice you get is to wear an adult diaper. So can you imagine it's going to be freezing cold. You're going to be standing in the rain in Times Square wearing an adult diaper. That's your
Yeah.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
This is the thing that memories are made of. Yes, I was standing in New Year's Eve. I was standing in Times Square New Year's Eve in my peeing in my adult diaper, and then I had to walk home and ride on the subway, and take the train back to New Jersey, wearing my soggy diaper.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I did it once when I was in college. Don't ever need to do that again. And I did not wear an adult diaper.
All right. Hey, I heard you had a birthday recently. Is that true?
Yep, yesterday.
All right. Well, do you think you're old yet?
I guess by some standards I am.
Well, there's a little quiz that says, are you old? So here's the quick quiz on are you old? Do you have something called cash in your wallet?
I do.
Well, then that's a dead giveaway. You're old. All right. Um, do you sometimes get the urge to play a Steely Dan CD? And if you have a CD, you're old. All right. Do you know anybody who still has CDs?
I actually do. I haven't gotten rid of them.
Okay. My wife has some she keeps in the car, but her new car doesn't have a CD player, so I don't know why she keeps them.
How does she play them?
She doesn't, but she transferred them from her old car to the new car. But the new car doesn't have a CD player. Um, you are old if you have reading glasses, driving glasses, and TV glasses, and you can't find any of them. Three pairs.
The only thing I have is well, computer glasses, I guess.
Okay. Uh, if you have taken or are planning to take an Alaskan cruise vacation, you're old.
Mm. Cruises don't do it for me.
No. And finally, if you need to take a minute to plan your approach before picking something up off the floor and how you're going to get back up off the floor after you picked it up, you're old. I, believe it or not, I can relate to that one sometimes. All right. You want to move on to passwords?
Yeah.
How many different passwords do you think you have?
Uh, I mean, I have a lot of variations of the same password.
Okay. Well, I have a three-page list, but you're right. I have a lot of variations. But surprisingly, in this day and age, one of these antivirus, you can go to, they went to like Gmail and said, uh, we don't want to know who, but please tell us because Gmail can look at, Google can look at your
Yeah.
passwords, right? And they did a sort. Um, Here, what do you think the most common password?
Password.
No, the password appears three times, but it wasn't number one.
Uh,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
yeah, that was gonna be my next guess. That was my second guess.
All right. Now the word password appears three times. One password, all lowercase. Again, password lowercase followed by the number one. And then finally, password with a capital P. So password one, and password with a capital
Yep.
P made the list three times. Um, Now, since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is only six digits, and a lot of websites now require you, or online accounts where to have eight or nine. The other two that made the list were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Um, QWERTY made the list. You know what QWERTY is, right?
Yeah, that's your keyboard.
Yeah, that right. If you take the just below the numbers, I'm looking at my keyboard. It's left to right, QWERTY, QWERTY.
Yep.
Then there's QWERTY 1, 2, 3, QWERTY 1, QWERTY 1, 2, 3, um, ABC 1, 2, 3. I love you. Baseball 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Princess, football, monkey, and sunshine. So, folks, if you are using any of those passwords and don't want to get your site or your accounts hacked, change it to something else. And by the way, here's a suggestion. Um, your license plate is completely random, six letters, six numbers, six letters. It makes a great password. And if you need more than six, add your birthday. So say you're born on the 3rd, and say your password is QRZ 421, and you were born on the third day, make it QRZ 42103. Add your birthday for the seventh and eighth letters. Or if you need more than that, do the year of your birth. Yeah, QRZ 124 1972. But use your car's license plate. Makes a great password, and you should know it. I'm always stunned at how many people don't know what their password is. All right. So when's the last time you checked your insurance policy and what you were being charged for?
Um, well, I bought a new car this last year, so this past year.
What, have you actually read your policy and see what you're being charged for?
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, here's a story out of Denver, and it turns out this is not unique to Denver, but Denver's the one that broke it. So Progressive. So a guy named Ed Fan, 31-year-old financial analyst. He lives alone. He's the only person who has access to and drives his 2019 Jeep Wrangler. But he was recently informed that they were increasing his 6-month premium by $312 for another driver in his home. And this guy says that other driver doesn't exist. He said, I had no idea who the supposed new driver was. I am the only driver on my vehicle. He repeatedly called and emailed Progressive trying to get them to remove the charges and the unknown person from his insurance policy. And it goes on and on and on. But what they're doing now, you're doing database record search. So say you buy a car and you transfer the plates from the old owner to the new owner.
Mhm.
They see that those plates were previously in the name of somebody else, and they assume that that person is still the owner of the car. Or they check your address, and if there are still driver's license, now, people will move out either from an apartment
Mhm.
and they'll move out, but they won't change their address with the DMV right away.
Mhm.
So they do these record search and they say, oh, well, there's three other people with driver's license living at 421 Main Street, Elm Street. And they just assume those other people are still there with access to your car. So they're adding these people to your policy because assuming that they are licensed drivers who have access to your vehicle.
Interesting.
And it turns out, the more this reporter dug into this, It turns out it's not an uncommon practice at all.
Wow.
So, uh, folks, if you might want to look at your insurance policy to see how many listed drivers are on your policy, because apparently this practice is running rampant in the industry. They're just adding drivers, not even drivers' names, just individuals like driver two. They call them driver two, driver three, on the flimsiest of excuses. So, folks, check your policy because you may be paying for drivers who don't exist. All right. I bet you didn't know that one, did you?
I didn't.
All right. Um, all right. So you want to talk about the town where everybody's required to own a gun and what effect that has on crime rates there?
Yeah, I bet their crime rate is pretty low.
Yep. And the town, by the way, is Kennesaw, Georgia. And here's the guy who went down there. He heard about this. He's an investigative reporter. So he went to Kennesaw, Georgia, a town about 35, that's more of a city. It's 35,000 people. And here's what he found when he got to Kennesaw. And here we go.
Turning myself into the police in Kennesaw.
Yeah.
That's me turning myself into the police in Kennesaw, Georgia, where every head of household by law must own a gun. But does everyone here actually own a gun? Is there less crime? And is this law actually enforced? Is it true you legally have to own a gun in Kennesaw?
It's on the books.
I heard.
Hell yeah, bro. Are you strapped?
Yes.
You're strapped?
By the way, the term "are you strapped" means are you carrying a concealed
Yeah.
weapon? Here we go.
You have a blippy.
Not with me now.
You have one at your house.
Yes.
I think everybody's strapped. People coming here all the time
A
with
lot of
them.
concealed carries?
Yeah.
Or just like
open.
rifles?
Oh,
Really?
when I moved here, they like, yeah, just make sure you got your gun. Like, what? Huh? We were already strapped, but they were like, gotta have a rifle.
Do you have to own a rifle to live in Kennesaw?
Yes.
And everyone here knows about it.
Yes.
And people actually follow through with it.
Yes.
Everybody's strapped, even my grandmother.
That ordinance was passed 41 years ago. And, given the level of gun violence in the United States, I think it's time for Kennesaw to make a statement to repeal that ordinance.
After hearing from the people, I drove downtown to an antique store to see if I could find the.
I'm Abby Maxman,
Hang on.
President and CEO.
I gotta run through this.
So while we're waiting for the commercial, does that include like convicted felons aren't allowed to have guns? So I
No,
assume,
the ordinance says, other than convicted felons.
okay. And obviously, I'm assuming also people over the age of 18.
Correct. So here we're going to go back. So anyway, so he's actually going to read the ordinance now for you.
An antique store to see if I could find the law in writing. What is this?
It's the law.
Okay. Every head of household residing in the city limits of the city of Kennesaw is required to maintain a firearm together with ammunition, therefore, in the city penal code. This is real. Would you say everyone was strapped back then?
We all are.
And then I stumbled upon an automatic weapon that.
Anyway, and there were exemptions under that, and the exemptions include people under the age of 18, people with felony convictions, but that is the law. So then I said, okay. And by the way, this is not a tiny town. They've in the background you can see there are Walmarts and fast food. There are
Uh-huh.
Walmarts and Chipotle's and whatnot. This is not a tiny little town.
A small
Um,
city.
I'm sorry,
A small city.
small city, 35,000. So I went and looked at their homicide records. You know how many homicide victims they had in Kennesaw, Georgia in 2022?
Zero.
Correct. You know how many they had in 2023?
Zero.
You know how many they had in 2024 up through December 30th?
Zero.
Zero. So 3 years they've had no homicide. Their burglary rate is almost non-existent. If you're a burglar and you know that virtually every house in town there's a loaded gun inside, how eager are you going to be to break into people's
Yeah,
houses?
I'm not. That's like we always joke about in Texas.
Yeah.
Don't break into homes in Texas.
And every business, this woman, he was talking to this one woman, and she's behind the counter. She pulls her gun out, and if not the business owner behind the counter, if there's three customers in the store or four customers in the store, at least three of the four are going to have a gun on them anyway. So Kennesaw, Georgia, virtually every citizen has a gun. The majority of people are carrying guns. 3 years in a row, not a single homicide. Burglary rate is non-existent. Armed robbery is non-existent. So Kennesaw, Georgia, you can just look it up. It's a YouTube video, and the link will be on the show notes when producer Susan gets them up. Probably not till Thursday, but Kennesaw, Georgia, everybody has a gun. Virtually no crime in that city. I just thought that was an interesting comparison. What do you think?
That is interesting, yeah. And
All
it's
right.
been proven over and over in many towns that the states that have these, where guns are more prevalent, that there's lower crime rates. And then you look at states that have super strict gun laws, like Illinois and New York, where
Yeah.
rates are out of control.
Only the bad guys. And if you're in New York City, if you're a thug in New York City, you know that 99.5% of the people on the street aren't going to have a gun.
Yeah.
So it's like you're a wolf among sheep in places like New York. So same thing in Chicago, by the way. So that's just the other extreme. Kennesaw, so you go from New York, where nobody but the thugs have guns, to Kennesaw, Georgia, where everybody has a gun. And the thugs, I think, are fearful for their life. They probably go to the neighboring towns to break in. All right, so let's talk about, this is almost pretty stupid, but New York Governor Kathy Hochul last week signed into law a bill that goes into effect on tomorrow, January 1. It's a punitive $3 billion per year tax on fossil fuel companies that sell fossil fuels in the state of New York, and it's 75 billion over 25 years, which works out to 3 billion per year. So, by the way, it is not the production of oil and gas that creates CO2 emissions, because a lot of oil, if you take oil and you use it to do asphalt to pave a road, you're not burning the oil, right? So that asphalt is not creating CO2 because it's still there. Asphalt shingles, plastic. So it's not the production of fossil fuels, it's the burning of fossil fuels. Well, these oil and gas companies that are doing business in New York, they have two choices. They can either stop selling their products in New York State, which I think just for grins they ought to do that. But more likely they're going to tack on the additional 3 billion in annual costs, plus a markup, by the way, because they have to make a profit on all their costs to the consumers. Well, I divided that. So if you take, there's 20 million people in New York City, but on a per household, if the average household has 3 people in it, that's going to cost every household in the state of New York an extra $400 to $450 per year per household to pay for this new law. So I don't know what the state legislature thought they were doing, that we're going to punish those evil oil and gas companies. All they're doing is punishing the residents of the state. But how many residents of the state of New York do you think understand that reality, that they're the ones being punished, not the oil and gas companies?
Yeah, they don't get it. And we, as we're getting ready to change administration, there's been a lot of talk about different tariffs and taxes and stuff on different businesses, that all the businesses are just going to pass that on to the consumer.
Yep. So again, they're not punishing the oil and gas companies, they're punishing the consumers of those products. And I think it's just another way for them to generate tax. Again, it's going to be 3 billion per year in additional tax revenue to the state of New York.
There's been a lot of discussion in our town recently. We have a lot of mom and pop businesses, restaurants in our town, and there's been a lot of discussion recently, and I'm sure this is across the country, about many businesses are adding a 3% surcharge onto bills if you use your credit card as opposed to cash. But many businesses are choosing to word it as a 3% discount if you pay cash.
Yep.
It's the same exact thing. It's just how you word it. 3% surcharge if you use a credit card, or 3% discount if you pay cash. It's the same thing.
Right.
But it baffles me how people in my town are throwing a fit over the 3% surcharge and yet praising the people who get the 3% discount for paying cash. I'm like, it's the same exact thing. 3% is 3%. Doesn't matter how you word it. It's all
by the way, how much I've got a great story about a young Catholic priest that my sister would love if we have time for it. How much time do we have?
We have about 10 minutes.
All right, here's a quick story. So the story goes that there was a young man wanted to become a priest. So he goes to the seminary where you study to become a priest, but he was also a smoker. And so one day the bishop, for his diocese, came around to the seminary, and so he had this question he wanted to ask the bishop, and he approached the bishop and he said, "Father, may I ask a question?" And the bishop said, "Go ahead, my son." He said, "Do you think it would be permissible for me to smoke while I pray?" Well, the bishop was, just aghast at this question, and gave the young seminarian a stern lecture upon the sanctity of prayer and the importance of focusing one's mind on the task at hand, and chastise him for even asking the question. Well, a few months later, as the Catholic churches want to do, the bishops get changed. The first bishop got promoted to a cardinal or whatever. New bishop comes around. So the young man approaches the second bishop and says to the bishop during his visit, "Father, I was have a question. I was wondering, do you think it'd be permissible for me to pray while I smoke?" And the bishop thought about that for a minute. He says, "Young man, I think that'd be an admirable use of your free time." So, smoke while you pray is horrific. No, yeah, it's insulting. But can I pray while I smoke? Sure, I don't see why not. It's the same thing with your 3% discount.
Yeah, the businesses that offer the 3% discount get revered, and the businesses that offer a 3% surcharge get crucified. And it's the same exact thing.
I hear you. It all
It's all
depends.
marketing.
It all depends how you
word it.
phrase it, how you word it. All right. So we're going to close up our last taxpayer relief shot of the year. And why do we call them taxpayer relief shots? Well, I'll let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, tell you why we call them Santa Rosa taxpayer relief shots.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And what he's referring to, we've talked about this many times. If a thug is arrested, gets a court-appointed attorney, and gets sent to jail for 10 years, that's $1 million of taxpayer money to try him and institutionalize him for 10 years. So when somebody shoots and kills the thug, you've saved the taxpayers $1 million on a 10-year sentence. If it's a life in prison, you're probably talking many, many times that. But this one comes to us from Bradenton, Florida, and I want you to listen very carefully where the surviving thug is from. I think they were both from the same place. But listen to where the surviving thug originated and how he got here and why he was still here. Here we go.
And killed one of two men who broke into his home in Bradenton, and the other suspect was caught while trying to run away. Two men with masks on were spotted on the homeowner's surveillance camera trying to get through the back of the house on Hickory Hammock Circle last night. News Channel 8's Mackenzie Laporte joins us live with the latest on that investigation. Mackenzie.
Yes, and now the Manatee County Sheriff's Department has identified both suspects. There was a first appearance today where Michael Sotomayor took the stand. Now he is going to be held in jail until his next hearing, and he's being charged with armed burglary, with possibly more charges pending.
Bottom line is, this is the state of Florida. You want to break into someone's home, you should expect to be shot.
The night after.
By the way, that was the sheriff. I love that. I'm going to back that up. If you break into someone's home, you should expect to be shot. Here we go.
This is the state of Florida. You want to break into someone's home, you should expect to be shot.
The night after Christmas, two masked men broke into a Bradenton home. One shot and killed, the other caught blocks away on foot. According to the Manatee Sheriff's Department, they are currently working with Border Control to learn more details on the suspects.
What we believe is that the suspect that survived is of Chilean descent.
He's of Chilean descent.
Came to California from Chile sometime a few months ago. I guess if you are from Chile, Border Patrol gives you a 90-day visa. That visa was supposed to expire in September. Suspect never returned back to Chile.
And by the way, a couple of months ago, didn't we talk about tourism burglary, where these gangs from South America are coming to the States for the sole purpose of robbing dozens of homes and then returning home? Didn't we do a segment on that a couple of months ago?
Yes.
So this sounds like exactly it. These two guys were from Chile. They went to California for the sole purpose of staging armed robberies. So let's continue with this.
A 90-day visa. That visa was supposed to expire in September. Suspect never returned back to Chile. Somehow made it to Tampa about six days ago.
While the investigation is still ongoing, the neighborhood of River Club shared their fears as they heard gunshots ring in.
Well,
By the way, I'm looking at this neighborhood, very, very high-end homes, which is consistent with these burglary rings from South America. These are all very high, where they got pools and large homes.
watching a movie and my dad was by the window and he goes, I'm pretty sure I just heard some gunshots.
Levi New Cedar, alongside his mother, were visiting for the holidays. Aiden and your side caught up with them before heading off to the airport.
Then we learned that there's still one guy out there, and I was pretty scared for a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Now, residents who have lived in the area for 20 plus years have said that they're not only shocked that this happened days after Christmas, but in this area specifically.
Yeah, I can only imagine how they're feeling. So what was happening earlier today when you arrived on scene? I mean, were residents out and around that neighborhood?
Yeah, so when we located the home and we arrived on the scene, there was actually the cleaners already parked in the driveway, and other residents were out walking around, living their normal day-to-day lives. And this is because they shared that they could have never imagined anything like this happening. And they also shared gratitude to not only the homeowner, but the sheriff's department for acting so swiftly.
All right, Mackenzie Laporte reporting live in Manatee County for us. Thanks so much.
And by the way, I think it's important that, this can't imagine it happening. These people, well, we live in a nice neighborhood. I can't imagine that happening here. Well, guess what? If you live in a nice home, and the burglar has a choice between burglarizing your home or burglarizing some beat up, rundown place, where do you think they're going to go?
They're going to go to the nice house because that's where the nice stuff is.
Right, the nice stuff is. So just because you live in a nice home in a nice neighborhood, please don't think that that makes you immune, because it doesn't. So anyway, Producer Susan, before we wrap up this last show of the year, anything you want to add?
No, I wanted to hear what you said, what your New Year's resolutions were going to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. So anyway, I've decided, looking back at this year, that I kind of like being a miserable, grumpy, old, sarcastic bastard. So for my New Year's resolution, I'm going to try and kick it up a notch in this coming year. That's my resolution. What do you think?
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, so miserable, grumpy, old, sarcastic bastard. Do more of that next year. So thanks for reminding me, but that's my resolution. All right. So anything else you want to add?
No, big New Year's plans?
No, just stay home. I'm going to watch the Penn State game on TV, and I'll be asleep by 10 probably. Well, if the
game won't be over by 10. The game will probably run until about 11.
Oh, well, I may have to stay up to 11 then. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your day. And if you've listened all year, I appreciate you listening every week for the past 52 weeks. I hope you found those topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to this podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you'll be able, in a day or so, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jerzee being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email with a question, a comment, or even a suggested topic, just send it to joe at jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee, Jerzee. And with that, Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we wrap?
I just want to wish everybody a happy and healthy and a safe new year.
All right. And I'll talk to you next year, and go Penn State.
Yep.